My name is David Dodge. I'm the executive editor of Gays with Kids. And so we're super excited to be doing this webinar series. This is our fourth now in over the last month or so that we've launched what we're hoping is going to be a very comprehensive step-by-step instructional to show people how to navigate every path available to fatherhood for gay, bi, and trans men. So this is part of our surrogacy series. We're also doing the same for people interested in adoption and foster care and for more non-traditional co-parenting arrangements. So stay tuned for all of those if you're considering those paths to parenthood as well. Gays with Kids has been around for about 6 years. You may know us from our Instagram account, which features adorable photos of gay men and their kids. We also have a website that's attached to that, which includes tons of family stories that kind of show how queer men have become parents over the years. And is also chock full of different, articles about resources available to queer men to become fathers, different elements about politics, entertainment. So if you're unfamiliar with our website, please do check that out, gayswithkids.com. We actually just relaunched it with a ton of new resources that we're really excited about, and this webinar series is part of that. Hello, Dr. Ringler. Let's just make sure I can...
Hi there.
Okay, cool. Thank you for joining, Dr. Ringler. I'm just giving a quick overview of the webinar that we're about to hear from, and then I'll hand it over to you guys to get started on the presentation. So we have so far been mostly a website and Instagram social media presence. We have a very active Facebook community, and so what we've heard, so I'm a journalist by training, so it's something we've been hearing from our followers for a long time, that they wanted very specific resources and instruction on how to become a dad via any of the paths available to queer men. So they've enjoyed reading about the stories, but they wanted to know, how do I choose a fertility center? How do I choose a surrogacy agency? Is this, how do I afford surrogacy if that's the path that's interesting to me? And we haven't always had the best answers up until now. So we've really spent the last year at Gays with Kids reaching out and finding the best partners possible, people that have been in this field for years and years, and that are really that we trust and have like a good track record of working very closely with the LGBTQ community. Because as you'll find as you're navigating this process, there are lots of options available for people interested in all of these paths, surrogacy and IVF included. But they're not all created equal, and there really are kind of a smaller group of professionals that we've come to trust over our years in doing this kind of work to give you the best kind of quality experience you can expect as a queer man, and just people interested in surrogacy and IVF. So we're very excited to have our partners on the call here today, who I will introduce in just a second. So I'm going to share my screen so we can get going with the presentation.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Okay, so we are very excited to be joined today by Dr. Guy Ringler, who's with California Fertility Partners. He's a partner there. And also Jay Cook Wong and Danny Cook Wong, who are the founders and owners of Same Love Surrogacy. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves a little bit more when we get to their slides. But what we're going to be covering today, so again, this is our third in our surrogacy series. And this one is specifically going to talk about how you build your surrogacy and IVF team, because it really is, they say it takes a village to raise a child, but with surrogacy and IVF, it really is true just to have one. So we're going to be going through all these professionals that are going to be really your guides throughout this process, and how you go about building the best team possible that's going to shepherd you through this very complicated process, and how you find LGBTQ competent professionals, people that are not only LGBTQ friendly, but have a really long track record of working with our community and making sure that we become dads in the best way possible. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Ringler, who's going to walk us through the 3 phases of a surrogacy journey.
Great. Welcome, everyone. My name is Guy Ringler, and I've been helping gay men have babies for over 20 years, with many happy dads along the way, I'm proud to say. And so even though the process may sound complicated and complex, I think it's really quite simple. So I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about what we do on the medical side to make this all happen. So it starts off with testing. I recommend that all intended dads start with the semen analysis just to make sure they have sufficient quantity and quality of sperm. And it also gives us an opportunity to help treat the sperm if we want to boost the numbers a little bit. So in my initial consultation, start with a semen analysis. The next step is to select an egg donor, and egg donor selection is one of the more important parts of the process, because not only will her genes provide the genes of your children, but her egg quality has a significant impact on embryo quality and ultimate success rate. So you want to take your time to select your donor wisely, and I can help you in that process. We work with a lot of outside agencies because you want choice. You want to search until you find the donor that you feel really excited about and who passes all of our medical screening. Once she's medically cleared, the next step is to create embryos for freezing. And so in that process, the egg donor undergoes hormonal stimulation to develop all of the eggs that she's produced in that cycle. And my goal is always to retrieve somewhere between 20 and 30 eggs. So it may sound like a large number of eggs, but after culturing and testing, those 20 to 30 eggs will usually give us somewhere between 3 and 10 genetically normal embryos. So we want to make sure we develop a sufficient number of embryos to produce a pregnancy, produce a baby, and maybe have some extras for additional children in the future. Once we have the embryos frozen, then we can go to the next step, which is to be matched with the surrogate. And 5 to 10 years ago, it was a little bit different in that we didn't create embryos until we had a surrogate ready to allow for a fresh embryo transfer into the surrogate. But today, in most high-quality IVF labs, the pregnancy rates with thawed frozen embryos are the same as fresh embryos. And so today we create embryos, freeze them for transfer at a later date and time to the surrogate mother. The surrogate mother undergoes her initial social screening and a little bit of medical screening in terms of record collection by the surrogacy agencies. So when my patients match with a surrogate from Same Love Surrogacy, for example, Same Love Surrogacy will gather all of the records from her prior pregnancies, and they will review those records, and then after a match is made, send them to me to make sure that all of her prior pregnancies were normal, uncomplicated, and that this would be a low-risk pregnancy, not a high-risk pregnancy in any way. And then when I see her for medical screening, she'll have a thorough physical exam, uterine evaluation, infectious disease screening to make sure that she's going to be an optimal environment, not only for getting pregnant, but for carrying that baby to term. Once she's medically screened, the lawyers complete all the contracts. And so once they give us final legal clearance, then we can plan an embryo transfer to start the pregnancy. So that's sort of a crash course in what we do to make this happen. So how do you select your IVF clinic? Well, number one, you need to work with a clinic that has experience in egg donation and surrogacy. These third-party cases, we call them, involving egg donation and surrogacy, require a team of professionals to carry out because there's a lot of testing, a lot of screening involved to meet the FDA requirements. So the egg provider undergoes FDA screening, the sperm provider, and there's a lot of details that need to be managed. And so you want to work with a program that has sufficient experience knowing how to manage these cases, how to collect all of the details to keep these cases running smoothly. You also want to work with a program that's LGBT friendly. You want to be treated with openness, kindness. This is a big, exciting chapter in your life, and you want to work with professionals that are going to be accepting you with open arms and helping you through this process. And when you're looking at different clinics, talking to different clinics, you want to find out who's managing your case, who's going to make the important decisions that could impact your overall success rate. Will it be your primary doctor or a doctor on call that day? So these are all important questions to ask. You also want to ask how you're communicated with, who communicates with you. Will you be hearing from your doctor, the nurse, an administrator? Again, this is a very important decision you're making. It's costly, it's very important to you, and you want to be an actively involved and kept abreast of everything that's happening at each step of the way. So ask who's going to be keeping you updated. And then a difficult question: what happens if it doesn't work? Ask your doctor, what do they do then? What if I have 2 transfers, it's not working? What's their approach to handling these cases when a pregnancy does not result? And just in general, when you're talking to different agencies, ask about the reputations of different programs. You want to work with a program that you feel cared for, that has a good reputation, and that's going to help you through this important process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Rainer. And so just for those that have just joined us, just as by way of how we're going to be moving forward with the rest of the webinar. So you should, at any point, we're going to get through about a half an hour worth of presentation here. We just heard from Dr. Ringler from the Fertility Center side. We're about to hear from the Cook Wongs about the Surrogacy Agency side. But at any point, if you have any questions about the very complicated overview that we've just gone over for the Fertility Center or for the Surrogacy Agency, feel free to use the Q&A function, which you should be able to see at the top or bottom of your screen. We'll just start going through those as much as we can towards the end of the presentation. You can also message us privately in the direct messenger feature. So at any point, feel free to start stacking those questions up, and we're going to just get through as many as we can. And they can be about what you're hearing from our presenters or anything else related to the topic of surrogacy or IVF. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Save Love Surrogacy. We're going to go over the surrogacy and IVF professionals that are going to be involved in your journey.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jay Cook Wong. This is my husband, Danny Cook Wong. And we're owners and founders of Same Love Surrogacy. We wanted to start an agency and give back to the LGBTQ community. So that was our main focus. Having had our own kids through egg donation and surrogacy led us to having such an amazing, great experience of having that and having our family. And we wanted to be able to share that with others. And so that's why that was the inspiration in creating our agency that focuses primarily on the LGBTQ community. So with that, we're going to talk about some of the professionals that are needed to make this process move forward and smooth. Dr. Ringler mentioned some of them along the way, but we'll go into each one a little bit more specifically. Obviously, you need a reproductive endocrinologist, such as somebody like Dr. Ringler. Their role is really, they're going to be screening the donors and the surrogates, doing the egg retrieval, doing the embryo transfer, and then monitoring the surrogate during the first trimester of the pregnancy. So that's very quickly what Dr. Ringler said in much more detailed way. The next person that you're going to need is a reproductive attorney that specializes in reproductive law and family formation. It's very, very important that you utilize an attorney that specializes in this. You don't want a friend who happens to be an attorney just who's a tax attorney drafting a surrogacy contract. It's not a way to save money. You need somebody who really specializes in this particular field, and they know exactly what they're doing. They're going to be drafting your donor and surrogate contracts. They're also going to be establishing your parental rights, whether it's a pre-birth order, depending on the state, or a post-birth order, again, depending on which state it is. So it's very important. Also, the location of your attorney can be important as well, because, for example, in the state where your surrogate may live, it may not be the state that you live in. So you really want to make sure that you have an attorney who's licensed in the state where your surrogate is going to give birth. The reason for that is because they need to be licensed in that state in order to petition the courts for your parental rights. And that's just an important aspect of the process. And we, as our agency, we have providers that are and attorneys that are in all of those states. Also, the next is the mental health experts, and that is somebody who is what's called an LMFT, a licensed marriage and family therapist. And what their role in the process is they're screening the donors, they're screening the surrogates, and they're screening the intended parents, making sure that everybody understands what they're getting into. They have a clear understanding of the process. A surrogate, for example, we want to make sure that she is psychologically okay with carrying a child for 9 months and then immediately giving birth and handing that baby over to somebody. You know, that's a big emotional thing. You need to make sure that she's capable of doing that. And so that's why we want to have these professionals, you know, do their reviews with everybody to make sure that they're fully aware and they have all the information necessary and needed, including the intended parents. You know, you want to know what you're getting into as well, because it's a pretty large responsibility. It's an amazing, awesome responsibility, but you certainly want to know what you're getting into and what all the aspects are for the psychological aspect of it. The next area is insurance. We certainly want to utilize insurance experts, because this is one of the more complicated parts of the entire journey, is the surrogacy or the insurance. Because every state has different policies. Some insurance policies have exclusions, and there's just, you know, so many different things. And then we might need the insurance brokers to place an appropriate policy if their own policy does have an exclusion, which oftentimes it does. So it's very important that we are working with insurance brokers who really specialize in this. Because a mistake in the insurance could be catastrophic down the road in terms of not having coverage or having coverage be denied, and you could potentially be responsible for all of the medical costs, you know, the delivery, the entire pregnancy, and we absolutely don't want to have that happen. So we want to make sure that you're protected, and we are working with insurance brokers that specialize in surrogacy insurance, and they're able to navigate all of the different policies. Every single state is different. They all have different policies. They all have different companies. They're all different brokers and in network and all that. So it's a very complicated part. It's very important that we are really focused on making sure that those brokers that we're working with are on top of everything. They will also help if there's any denied claims, those kind of things. They're gonna help with as well. The last part is the caseworker. So at the agency, who is your caseworker? Who's your direct main point of contact? And that's very, very important, because at Same Love Surrogacy, we've kind of taken a different approach and a different model. And your case manager for our agency is one of the owners. It's either myself or my husband, Danny, or a business partner, Brad Spencer. And we manage every single case. We would be your direct point of contact. Why that's important is because you need to be able to get a hold of somebody during this process. We give our direct cell phones. You have direct access to us 24/7 for the entire journey, whether it's a year, whether it's 15 to 18 months, however long that may be. You want to be able to have access to us, and on the evenings and weekends. I promise you, babies are never born Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. They always come on the weekends and on the holidays, and so it's important to be able to have that direct contact. And next, we'll go to the next slide, and I'll talk about briefly how to pick a surrogacy agency and what are important things to ask. So one of those things is how many, what would you ask to an agency? How many surrogacy cases do you manage annually? So with Same Love Surrogacy, we on average do about 100 to 120 cases annually that we're managing. Just gives you an idea of the size and what they're able to handle and be capable of. Another great question is, what does your staff consist of? How many staff members do you have? You want to make sure that they're fully supported. They have enough staff to be able to support the surrogate and or donors. In our case, because we also have an egg donor program as well, so we're a full service agency. So we have people who that's their specific jobs that they focus on. You also want to ask about communication, how the communication works between you, between the agency, and between all of the providers. Another important question to ask when deciding on an agency is, do they have a waiting list for being matched to a surrogate? How long is that waiting list? Some agencies may have a 6 months, 9 months, or even up to a year waiting list to be matched to a surrogate. That's a very important aspect, especially if in your mind you're ready to start this process and you want to know, well, if I'm ready to go and I have my embryos ready, how long do I have to wait to get to be matched? That's a very, very important question. And with our agency, it's fortunately very quickly. We've reinvested a lot back into our company, and we have a lot of available surrogates. And so we can match with same-level surrogacy very, very quickly. We have a lot of repeat returning surrogates because we provide a high level of customer service, not only to our clients, but also to our surrogates as well. And so they want to come back and do repeat journeys with us. Another important thing you might want to mention is if your agency has rematching fees and what those fees are. We typically don't want to have to rematch. We want everything to work the first time, and that's our goal. That's Dr. Ringler's goal. It saves everybody the most amount of time and money. However, it's not a perfect world. Sometimes things happen in situations, and if you had to rematch to a different surrogate for whatever the reason may be, at our agency, we have a 0 rematching fee. So you wouldn't pay any fees to have to rematch. It's just a good, important question, you want to know, because, we feel, why should you be penalized financially because something didn't work that you had no control over? So we don't have any rematching fees with our agency. One of the last things I wanted to mention is surrogate compensation. You want to ask the agency, what do you pay your surrogates? Because it's not the agency that's paying the surrogate. It's you, the intended parent, who pays that. So it's going to dramatically affect your overall cost and how much you're spending. And so it's very important you want to know what the breakdown is and how much you're going to have to pay for the surrogate's compensation. And the last thing is you really want to know how LGBTQ friendly is the agency. What have they done? What have they put in place? What is their percentage of LGBTQ clients? I can tell you, for same-love surrogacy, this is our specialty. That's why we went into this. And 85% of all same-love surrogacy clients are same-sex couples. That's a pretty high percentage. We don't discriminate. We do have some heterosexual clients, but that's mostly because our gay clients have referred them to us, their friends. Mm-hmm. So, but that is definitely our main focus. And, our needs are different. When you walk into a hospital, say you have 2 men that walk into a hospital and they're there to pick up their baby, we want to make sure that the hospital's aware of the situation. We don't want them to have any surprises, or somebody at the desk, say, wait, be all confused and be shocked and make it an uncomfortable situation. So we take extra steps to make sure everybody's aware of the situation and knows what's going on. So it's a smooth process from the very beginning of your journey until the very end after you're leaving the hospital with your baby. So I think we can start maybe some Q&A.
Great. Okay, so thank you so much for the overview. So again, we just crammed a lot into 30 minutes of a presentation. These are very complicated matters, so no worries if you're still confused. That's what our Q&A session is for. And I do want to encourage people to ask as many or anything that relates to the topic of surrogacy or IVF. It doesn't have to be solely related to what we presented here today. And it can be specific to your own personal situation as well. We're going to get through as many questions as we can. And for those that we can't, I'll have you email us at dads@gayswithkids.com, and we'll try to follow up with you with one of our experts. Also, if we happen to not know one of the answers to one of the questions, which probably will not happen, but if that happens, then we'll also take some time afterwards to follow up with you and make sure that we get you the response to the question that you're looking for. Okay, with that, I'm going to go to our first question. And again, you can fill the questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen, or if you'd rather do it privately, there's a direct message feature as well that you can text us directly. Okay, so Micah wants to know, what are the pros and cons of working with an agency which is out of state? Should one's agency search be limited to agencies where the intended parent has residency? This is a great question. Why don't you take it first, Sam Love, and then we'll get Dr. Ringler's perspective from the fertility side.
Sure. So it really doesn't matter where your agency is located. They don't need to be in the same state as you. They can be anywhere, especially now in today's age where everything is video and teleconferencing. We can pretty much do everything from anywhere. So it really doesn't matter. We have clients all around the world, in countries in Asia and in Europe, and also all across the United States. So it makes no difference where they're located.
Great. So there, I guess the one factor would be travel, I guess, if people have to factor that into the overall experience, right? So, but that would be the only thing. Yeah.
Only thing that's more in terms of choosing the IVF clinic. The agency doesn't really matter. They don't need to physically come to the agency. We can do everything electronically.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay. Dr. Ringler, how about from the fertility center side?
I agree with that. I mean, what I've seen is most surrogate agencies today have surrogates from many different states, surrogacy-friendly states, of course. So you don't have to limit yourself to an agency in your state. A big question for intended parent is, do they want their surrogate to be nearby so they can go to OB appointments with her or not? For my California intended parents, many are selecting a surrogate from outside of California just because the costs are a little bit lower. So if they need to, be mindful of their budget by choosing an out of state surrogate from Wisconsin or Nevada, allows them to have some cost savings. So it really doesn't matter.
Great, thank you both so much. Okay, so next is a question about caseworkers who are trained in case management, like social work. So I guess the specific question for you, Same Love, is are any of your case managers trained in case management? Are they social workers, trained social workers?
So they're not licensed social workers. I being one of the case managers, I'm a registered nurse, so I'm an RN. So I have more of the medical side of things. But that, as long as you have somebody who is very familiar with this particular field, it really doesn't matter. They don't need to be a social worker because that's what we have the mental health professionals for. And that's what we're relying on them because that's their area of expertise.
Great. And relatedly, Dr. Ringler, who is it that within the fertility center tends to be the case manager from the fertility center side? Who will people be interacting with mostly?
We have a nurse assigned to each case, so the nurse will know the egg donor, the nurse will know the surrogate, the nurse will know the intended parents. We make sure that after each visit, the intended parents are communicated so they know what's going on with their egg donor, know what's going on with the surrogate. And it may be the nurse in charge of that case, or we have a nurse liaison overseeing all of the third-party cases just to make sure that communication's in place and everyone is kept up to date. Because for the intended parent, the sperm provider, they may come in once to free sperm, and then they're not involved again until much farther along down the road. So they need to know when the egg donor is coming in, how the egg donor is doing, how many eggs. I always email my patients the day of egg retrieval, and I give them an update on how many embryos they have, and the genetic testing will review that. So I think communication is vital in the process because you want to feel very involved, even though you may not be involved, but your sperm is frozen here.
Great. Okay, great. So hopefully that answered your question. If it did not, feel free to re-ask it, and we'll see if we can get you the answer you're looking for. Okay, so this next question is about the percentage of successful overall cases, I guess, from the initial starting point to having a baby. So how often do people, so I guess these might be two questions. So how often do your clients end up having a baby, and how many end up dropping out for whatever reason? So we'll start with you, Dr. Ringler.
Well, most cases today will do a single embryo transfer, and most patients today will elect to do PGT, pre-implantation genetic testing of the embryo. So if we transferred a genetically normal embryo into a surrogate, positive pregnancy test is about 80%, with delivery rate right around 70%. So the pregnancy rates are high. So my goal is always to get my patients pregnant on the first transfer. But sometimes there's a miscarriage. Up to 10% of pregnancies can miscarry. So I always want to make sure we have extra embryos in case the first transfer does not result in a live birth. So most patients get pregnant from the embryos from that first egg donor cycle. It's unusual to have to cycle the egg donor a second time. And from a medical cost perspective, most of the cost is in generating those embryos. So again, that's why I want to make sure we can generate a sufficient number of embryos to achieve a pregnancy from that first cycle.
Great. And same love, how about, do you often have people drop out of the process for any reason, or how many of your clients end up with a baby at the end of the process?
I would say 99% of the time for us, our clients are always going to end up with a baby at the end of the process, especially if they're committed to the process. They're definitely going to be successful. As Dr. Ringler mentioned, most of the time it happens on the first transfer. But if it doesn't happen on the first transfer, it almost always is going to happen by the second transfer. And so as long as they stick to the process, and they've already committed a tremendous amount of money, it's very expensive, so people don't back out. Where I've maybe seen somebody back out is if they were in a relationship and something happened in that relationship, so they decided to no longer move forward. That would be maybe the only thing. But medically, as long as you're devoted to the process and you keep moving forward, we're going to be able to get a baby for you.
Mm-hmm. I have heard that, I've just related to this topic, but with gay, bi, and trans men who are coming to the process of surrogacy and IVF, they're doing so for obviously slightly different reasons than heterosexual couples that are approaching you for the same services, because they're obviously experiencing issues of infertility. So I assume that the rates are probably higher for gay, bi, and trans men that use your services than for your heterosexual couples. Is that wrong?
Yeah, they definitely are much higher success rates because typically we're using a young, healthy egg donor, and that's really the key to the success and the quality of the embryo is the egg donor. It's crucial, as Dr. Ringler mentioned. And so by utilizing that young, healthy donor, the outcomes and the success rates are much higher. So you're correct.
Great.
David, these are really the best possible conditions to initiate a pregnancy, because we have these eggs from a healthy young egg donor. We're creating embryos that are genetically screened. Then we're putting them into the perfect environment that the surrogate provides. This is a woman with proven fertility. So it's the best possible conditions to initiate a pregnancy and to deliver a baby at term.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Matt wants to know if he was interested in twins, should he be selecting a surrogacy fertility center experienced with twin birth, or does that expertise travel generally across the centers? Why don't we start with you, Dr. Ringler?
Yeah, that's a great and very timely question, because within our profession, there's been a trend towards minimizing the risk of twins, because in general, twins are a high-risk pregnancy. When I say high risk, that's because most complications of pregnancy occur more often in twins compared to singleton. Increased risk of miscarriage, hypertension in pregnancy, diabetes in pregnancy, and the big ones, preterm labor and delivery. So our goal is to keep twin babies in as long as we can. A term pregnancy is 37 to 40 weeks. Most twins are born about 1 month early, so about 34 to 37 weeks. Once we get beyond 34 weeks, generally they do fine, but if they're born prior to 34 weeks, then they'll likely spend some time in the neonatal intensive care unit that poses health risk to them long term. So, 5 to 10 years ago, we would transfer 2 or 3 embryos all the time. Today, not in our clinic, most of the time we'll do a single embryo transfer. If my patients really want twins and we've discussed the risks and they're comfortable with the risks, then we're going to select a surrogate that we think is going to be at a lower risk for complications. Maybe she's carried twins before and did very well, made it to term, or at least has carried large babies to term without going into preterm labor. So she really has to be squeaky clean perfect in her past pregnancy history and physical exam to try the best we can to minimize some of those risks.
Great, thank you. Jane, Danny, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We actually, Danny and I have twins, so we personally experienced that. And it's important, definitely having the right surrogate, because the risks are very, very real. And so it's important to talk to the IVF doctor who you want to work with about this ahead of time, because a lot of IVF clinics are some of them are almost refusing to actually allow double embryo transfers, and some agencies also don't allow that. We do, I know Dr. Ringler does, but we take extra steps to be really careful to make sure that we're ensuring all safety measures are met. As Dr. Ringler mentioned, that we want to have the right surrogate. We certainly wouldn't want to choose a surrogate who's 5 foot, 100 pounds. Her frame she's just not going to be large enough to carry twins. So those are things that we look at, and we want to make sure that we are very careful when choosing the surrogate, and that we're doing everything possible to minimize the additional risks that twins present.
Right. I mean, it makes.
Okay, but I just think the intended parents who's thinking about twins, they should ask the clinic if they do double embryo transfers, and ask the agency if they're comfortable with a twin pregnancy, because I do know some surrogacy agencies will not do twin pregnancies.
Correct.
So this is a question that we're asked a lot too, and it's especially, you look at, there are lots of examples of same-sex couples that do have twins through surrogacy, I think partly because it used to be more common than it is now. But so what are some alternatives that you offer, that you might walk people through if they're interested in, both men are interested in having a child, and kind of back to back? There are examples of doing two surrogates at once, that sort of a thing, right? Do you want to walk us through how that works, Jay and Danny, and then you, Dr. Ringler?
Sure. Okay. With our agency, we actually have a sibling discount too. So whether with the first journey, then with the second journey, we actually give a 25% discount on our journey, knowing that
for the agency
fee. So we have that in mind. So to help out the intended parent.
So financially, yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but we too try to decrease with that break of the second surrogate. And
even with the double two surrogate too, sometimes we would help. Should they want to at the same time, we actually do.
We give a discount too if they're going to do two surrogates at the same time as well. It's definitely a safer route to go. Yes, it is more costly, but if you look at a twin pregnancy, and if things go drastically wrong, and you do have that percentage where you fall into that category where you have a preterm delivery, say at weeks 26, 27, you're looking at 4 months in the NICU and hospital bills and having to leave work and be away. So the cost could actually end up being more in a twin pregnancy than if you just went ahead and had two surrogates and did the safe route to begin with. So those are just different options.
Right. Great. Dr. Ringler, how about from the fertility center perspective?
Yeah, I love the option of two surrogates instead of a twin pregnancy, just to minimize risk. It's all about, what's best for the baby. And it's always safest for babies to be born one at a time. So there may be, a little bit extra costs, but it's not double. The embryos we have the embryos. It's not as if we need to create more embryos. It's just who are we transferring them into. I have one couple I know, we did two surrogates. They wanted twins safely. And the transfers, just due to logistics, ended up being a couple months apart. And one surrogate ended up delivering a little late, one surrogate a little early. They both delivered in the same hospital the same day, within a couple of hours apart.
Wow.
Both did full term and did well. It was incredible.
Amazing.
Very happy ending.
That's great. So it does sound like, the subject of twins has kind of changed within the surrogacy and IVF world in recent years, but it also sounds like you're all very competent and able to handle a twins pregnancy should that arise, or should it be something that someone feels strongly in. Does that seem safe to say?
Yes.
Great.
There's also a chance of transferring one embryo and it splitting. My partner yesterday had a twin pregnancy, transferred one embryo. So the chance of that happening is about 1.5%. So it's not high, but it does happen.
Right. Okay, great. So this one's for you, Dr. Ringler. Micah asks that you mentioned semen analysis as one of the first steps in the process. Can that analysis be performed by one's doctor, I guess like their own general practitioner, as a general appointment, or does the sample analysis have to be done via a particular clinic or process?
It can be done anywhere, because it's just a baseline check, just to get an idea of the parameters. The parameters we look at are count, which is concentration, motility, which is the percent that are swimming, and then morphology, which is the shape of the sperm heads. So for most men, we'll use frozen sperm in the process. The only men I want fresh sperm on are men with extremely low numbers. So if your initial baseline semen analysis with your general practitioner comes back really low, then you may be asked to provide fresh sperm on the day of the egg retrieval. Otherwise, for over 95% of the men, we will have them freeze sperm in advance and use that frozen sperm. So after your baseline semen analysis looks great, you can travel to LA, freeze sperm in our lab, we'll do all the required FDA infectious disease screening, and that sample will be used on the day that your egg donor comes through.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Angel wants to know, it seems like there are many professionals involved from different organizations in different states, which is true. The coordination is done by the agency, or is the coordination done by the agency? Is there a reason why all these professionals aren't in the same agency and clinic to make things more efficient? So I would say maybe this is a good way of both of you explaining how the agency and the clinic work together in this process collaboratively. Why don't we start with you, Sam?
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say that having everything in house sounds great, but there's a cost involved to that. Having professionals like being able to, I guess, select who you want. It gives you more choices, basically. We have all the different providers, different attorneys, so you get to choose. When you get to choose, you can also lower your costs, because if everything's in-house, you're basically fixed on whatever the price is.
Right,
so
you don't have choice.
You don't have choices.
If they're providing the attorney, they're providing the insurance broker, the mental health, and even in some cases, the IVF doctor and clinic, you have no choice over the price. Attorney, we have some attorneys who are going to charge this amount, and we have another attorney who could literally charge double that amount. So by using different professionals, it gives you choices, and it helps you maintain control and keep your costs in check.
And obviously, as an agency, we would vet through all these professional providers and make sure they're top notch, and we basically would not work with anybody that's or poor results or whatever. So we will basically present you with all the choices and help you make the right choice, right
decision on the providers.
Yep.
Great.
What do you say, Dr. Ringler?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's all about choice. I usually give my patients several surrogacy agencies, multiple egg donor agencies. This is a big decision in your life. You want to work with professionals that you feel really comfortable with, and one person can't please everyone. I only refer to people who people in agencies that I really respect, that I know could work, and I trust them to take care of my patients. But you want to provide patients with that choice. For egg donors specifically, egg donor selection is such a personal decision that you want to search until you find that right donor that's perfect for you. And it doesn't matter which agency to me that she comes from. It's all about finding that right match for you.
Great, thank you. Okay. So Matt wants to know, if you decide to harvest eggs again from the same donor that your agency found for you, I guess this would be for a second journey, is it common to pay the agency another finder's fee? Sam, do you want to answer that?
So I would say this differs by agency. So yes, it is true. Some agencies will charge you a full agency fee again for using that same donor, which may or may not necessarily be fair. But what we do at Same Love Surrogacy for our donors, if you needed to do a second donation or retrieval with that particular donor, is that, and say it could be because maybe you didn't have enough to begin with, and maybe it's two men who are splitting the eggs and they ended up with not enough embryos, or one of them didn't have enough embryos, so they need to do another retrieval in order to create more embryos. So we give a 50% discount. At the bare minimum, we give a 50% discount if you're going to use the same donor again. In some circumstances, if it's completely like they ended up with no embryos or whatever the situation may be, since they've already paid our first initial agency fee, we've completely waived the agency fee and allowed them to have another retrieval with the same donor for no cost. So it really just sort of depends on the situation, but we're very on the side of the intended parent and very mindful of the intended parent. We created our agency with the intended parent's point of view in mind. And so that's why we've structured things the way we have. in a way to try to keep their costs as low as much as possible. So most of the time, we will not even charge the agency fee if medically there was a problem and they needed to do another retrieval.
Great. And how about at California Fertility Partners, Dr. Ringler?
Well, when the egg donor comes, every time the egg donor undergoes a treatment cycle, she has monitoring, she has surgery, so there is a fee for that. So she would be charged a fee.
Okay, great. Okay. Wander wants to know, in case both partners, both intended parents are equally fertile, would you recommend a 50-50 embryo creation, or would it be smarter to stick with one genetic father? You want to fill this one, Dr. Ringler?
That's an interesting question. It's really a personal decision. Do you want to be a biological dad or not? Is it not important to you? I guess if it's not important, a couple could decide to use the partner who had the best sperm. Most of my patients will do 50-50. I've had patients do a 70-30. You know, it's really such a personal decision.
Great. Well, so yeah, why don't we actually take the opportunity then to walk through how you all, both from the agency and the clinic side, walk intended fathers through that process of trying to figure that out, because this is something you help your clients with, this question. When it's two men and you try to decide whose sperm source to use, it can be a difficult part of the process. So is there any kind of tips you would give people, or any suggestions for how to figure that out?
Well, when we do the initial semen analysis, when they come into freeze, on the day that they come in, I'll review their numbers with them, and tell them what their sperm fertility potential is. In this process, we do assisted fertilization. So we help the sperm fertilize, because these numbers that we're looking at, the concentration, motility, they predict sperm function. The function of sperm is to penetrate an egg. So if their motility is a little low, then naturally that sperm may not be able to fertilize an egg well. But we help it fertilize by injecting the sperm into the egg. So we achieve high fertilization rates of 75 to 80%, pretty much regardless of the sperm quality. The sperm quality could impact down the line how many blastocysts form, how many usable embryos we have. So it's still an important factor, but we can help it function. So when I review the numbers, the guys will decide, whose sperm they want to use. And maybe if one guy has great sperm, his partner has poor sperm, then we may give the one with poor sperm, more eggs to inseminate. But it really comes down to how important it is for them to be a biological dad. Because if it's really important, then we're going to create embryos. Some of my patients, not only is it important who's a biological dad, but they want a certain gender. So these some of the cases that Jay mentioned where they didn't have enough embryos, oftentimes it's because there wasn't enough embryos of the desired gender, so they may cycle the egg donor a second time to generate more embryos. So it's a discussion between the intended parent and the physician based upon the sperm numbers, and then how, based upon their feelings about being a biological dad or not.
Right. How about you and Jay and Danny? Anything you would coach your clients through when they're trying to figure this process out?
Right. I would certainly say this is more on the medical side of it. But it's really about personal, like Dr. Ringler said, it's really about personal preference and choice. If you really want to both be, if you're a couple and you really both want to be a biological parent, then you should, and we can do that. Dr. Ringler has the technology to be able to, even if you have low sperm count or poor motility, he has the ability to still make it work and still get embryos. And so we can certainly do that. And it's all about, what you want to do. When Danny and I went through the process, we actually, as I mentioned, we had twins. We had one donor, and the embryos that we put in, one embryo was fertilized by me, one was fertilized by Danny. So our twins are actually half brothers carried together in a twin pregnancy. So, the technology is pretty advanced and pretty amazing in what can be done today. So it's really all about personal choice and personal preference.
Great. Also on this topic, Dr. Ringler, what I've learned through you, actually, when we were creating some of the resources, some of the new resources for our site, is that there are some easy kind of health factors that can, or some lifestyle changes that can help men improve their sperm quality that could be improved in just a matter of several months. Do you want to walk us through what some of those are?
Sure. Things that can have a negative effect on sperm production include excess body weight, all the excesses, excess smoking, excess alcohol, excess marijuana, excess heat in the testicles, excess exercise. Guys who go to the gym 7 days a week, sperm don't like that, So you want to talk with your doctor to go over your lifestyle to see what we can do to try to improve the sperm quality. It's hard to be, too critical on lifestyle and guys with excellent sperm numbers. So I don't go there, but if your sperm parameters are off a little, then we're gonna talk about your lifestyle.
Another thing, Dr. Ringler, also is certain products such as Propecia or finasteride, which are for help hair growth, those are pretty detrimental as well to to fertility, to a men's fertility. So oftentimes Dr. Ringler will have you maybe stop if you're on those medications.
You gotta stop.
He might have you stop for a while. Am I right on that?
Poor baby. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And testosterone is a big no-no. Testosterone can turn off sperm production. I've had men become azoospermic, meaning no sperm in their semen for up to 6 months after testosterone use.
Wow, but so is that reversible then if they go 6 months without production and then
in most cases it's reversible. Some are very slow to respond, but usually it's reversible.
Great, fantastic. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left, and I got one question privately about, and we could probably take the next 5 minutes just talking about this, but could you both talk about how COVID has impacted your businesses, or how it hasn't, how you're making sure that intended fathers, donors, surrogates are all staying safe right now? Why don't we start with you, Dr. Ringler?
Yeah, when COVID hit the end of March, we followed the guidelines of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, and we stopped doing new treatment cycles. And those guidelines were lifted in April, around mid-April. And then, so we've been slowly getting back to normal. We practice differently. We try to minimize patients waiting in the waiting room. So we have our scheduled patients spread out more often. Patients are not allowed to bring a visitor, including a partner. Of course, everyone has to wear a mask. We have temperatures upon check-in. With my surrogates, I talk to them specifically about what they're doing to help prevent COVID. Are they working? Are they staying at home? Do they wear face masks all the time? Are they going to barbecues, to parties? I've been very impressed with the surrogates. These surrogates all have children of their own at home. Their priority is to keep their family safe as well as the future pregnancy. So, and for my new intended parents, I asked them to talk to their potential surrogate matches about what they're doing to minimize the risk of COVID to their family.
Great. How about you, Sam Love?
Along those same lines, the surrogates and also the donors, one of the things that we also talk about is in terms of travel, because oftentimes the surrogate or the donor has to travel cross country, so they're taking airplanes, they're in airports, and there's a lot of concern about that. So we just make sure that they're following all of the appropriate precautions that in the guidelines that have been put in place, such as hand hygiene, wearing masks,
social distancing,
all of those things we want to really make sure that they're adhering to, and we have conversations with them about that to make sure that they are going to be following those things. Another thing that we do also is to help minimize that is when we have surrogates and we have donors that are flying in, we don't have them take Ubers. We don't do that. We actually have a staff member pick them up at the airport and bring them to the clinics. Our surrogate coordinators do that, and our donor coordinators also physically go to the airport, pick them up, bring them to their appointments. Then afterwards, we'll take them to the hotel. We do those extra steps to kind of protect them, but it's also, we do that anyway because we want to provide a high level of service for them, and we don't want them to have to be, flailing around trying to get Ubers and taxis and having to pay for those things. We want to make it as easy and convenient as possible. Additionally, with COVID, you know, it's hit everybody in terms of, in one way or another, it's impacted our lives. Initially in March and April, those were pretty tough months for everybody because everything was completely shut down. Since then, we actually took a risk, our agency, and we didn't lay off employees. We didn't minimize things. We took a risk and we actually increased our marketing budget. We hired another full-time donor coordinator during the period. And those things have actually paid off quite well for us because now we have a tremendous amount of surrogates available. So we actually have a surplus. So in doing that, those are some things that, you know, we took a risk and that risk paid off. And that's why we have a lot of available surrogates right now, which is, you know, great and helpful for our intended parents.
Yeah, I think in the beginning of COVID was very frightening for all of us. You know, our nurses were afraid to come to work. We had our embryologists working shifts. We thought if someone gets infected, then the whole team is infected. But as we've all learned how to live and how to live safely with COVID, you know, we see that life goes on, and that's why I think for intended parents who are planning a family, you know, just go do it. You know, we all have to keep moving forward. What's more positive about, you know, having a baby? And so I think it's really great that patients still want to continue and they want to create their family, and they should. We just do it in a safe manner today.
Fantastic. Well, that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thank everyone so much for joining us. I hope we were able to answer everyone's questions. I will say if we did not, or if you need a more comprehensive answer, please do email us at dads@gayswithkids.com, and we will have one of our experts get back to you with the answer that you're looking for. Again, this is we're just the start of a series of new resources that Gays with Kids is rolling out in partnership with experts like Same Love and California Fertility Partners. We're very excited about these new partnerships. We're having a webinar once a week. Actually, our next two are listed here. So we're going to be on the all important topics of how you can afford what are often very expensive processes for gay, bi, and trans men to become dads. We're going to be walking through how you can afford an adoption next week, and then the week after that, we'll be doing the same for surrogacy and IVF. So please do join us for either of those if you're interested. Also, please check out our website. Again, we're just rolling out new resources basically every week at gayswithkids.com that will help walk you through each of these different processes and, you know, start to finish, hopefully get you everything, all the answers that you're looking for your questions. I can't thank Jay and Danny from Same Love Surrogacy enough, and Dr. Ringler from California Fertility Partners. Thank you, all three of you, so much for being here. You'll be seeing them in future resources on our website and also future webinars. So please do reach out to them directly. Actually, if you want to talk about how people can get in touch with you very quickly, Jay and Danny, and then Dr. Ringler, just a quick 10-second sign off.
So you can reach us through our website, which is samelovesurrogacy.com, has all of our information, and email contact, everything there.
Great. And Dr. Ringler.
Yeah, I can be reached. I give my email to everyone is gringler@californiafertilitypartners.com. So
Great.
happy to answer any questions or, you know, talk to anyone about starting a family.
Great. And we also have great resources on all of our expert partners on gayswithkids.com, so you can find out more about these folks and also the other experts that we're working with there. So again, please do check out our website and email us if you have any questions or feedback. Thanks everyone again for joining us, and hopefully we'll see all of you on a future webinar. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.